Good afternoon, everyone. Glad that you're enjoying your lunch. I hope I can also enjoy lunch in a short while. I'm going to request for a little multitasking from you. If you can eat and listen at the same time, please. Yeah. I'm going to talk about a very important topic, API security. It's an area that's been neglected, I believe. I think a lot of customers, organizations have gone ahead and implemented APIs without realizing that they are exposed to a lot of attacks, potential attacks, and in particular, shadow APIs that are not supposed to be there that have been discovered by attackers and compromised. So today I'm going to walk you through what are these API security concerns that you should be aware of and perhaps how you could protect it. Yeah? So first of all, why APIs are becoming the #1 concern for enterprises? It's because traditional security doesn't address API security, unfortunately. You know, the traditional WAF, the next-gen firewall, DLP, and so on, they just don't address APIs holistically. So that's #1. #2, on why API security is a concern is that PII and sensitive data are now being extracted out of APIs. It's very common that customers are exposing PII data and sensitive data through APIs. #3 is API sprawl. We are seeing applications being put onto AWS, Azure, on-prem, and they're just publishing numerous APIs. And they are multi-cloud. Not only that, they are also communicating one another and sometimes with business partners over VPN, private connectivity. So it is becoming a sprawl and it's out of control. This is a rather important diagram to kind of understand why API security is different to your traditional way of protecting your applications. The top is your normal web application. You notice that a normal web application, the data logic is processed at the server end. In modern applications like mobile app, you're making API calls to the server, the data is being processed at the mobile end, at the endpoint. So that means your data has already left your data center and it's gone to the endpoint to be processed. So that means the control that you have is limited. Your API has already been made and the data is being processed at the endpoint. So traditional security controls don't apply anymore. If you look at OWASP, a very popular open community, open web application security project, they started off with the web application security top 10, which are all the top 10 web attacks that all of us have come to know. In 2019, OWASP published the top 10 for API security in 2019. And they just refreshed that in 2023, just last month, with their top 10 for API security. And the third column there, OWASP also been tracking automated threads. And the reason why automated threads are so important and interlinked with APIs is because once you publish APIs, it's very easy for an attacker to use automated script to attack the APIs in a volumetric way, in an automated way. So automated threads has become another key area of concern with regards to APIs. Now these are famous logos that have all experienced data breaches in the last 24 months. And if you look at all these logos, they are very big brands. They spend millions of dollars on cybersecurity. And yet, they still get data breaches. Something is wrong. Traditional security is not enough for API security. If you look at the most recent one, T-Mobile, in May, they lost tremendous amount of data. And that led to damages, brand damages, and including the governance and the government regulations violations that could lead to a lot of potential liquidation damages. This was a famous one back in October last year, a telco in Australia. And all they did was, there was a mistake by a developer to publish an API that's for his personal use, for his own testing. Unfortunately, he made a mistake and published it to the internet. And this mistake allowed the attacker to find that shadow API that's not supposed to be published, but it's there. The attacker found that this particular API call allows you to retrieve a PII record, a customer record. And instead of calling it one time, he calls it 10 million times. As a result, he got 10 million records. And this is a big, big issue, right? Obviously, for this service provider. It means now 10 million records, including Medicare card, which is kind of an IC card in Australia, has to be replaced. And that means there's damages that could potentially be slapped on because of that. In Philippines, you do have guidelines for this. The Banco PSP has a circular around APIs for regulating the banking sector here. And at the same time, you also have DPA Act, which is to protect PII data, our personal data that needs to be guarded. And there's an act that could take, can apply to anyone who is not in compliance for this. And I want to share a case study. Case study came from Singapore, because Singapore has a similar PDPA Act, a law that can act on any entity that did not respect PII. And this particular case happened about 3 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, for an organization that was operating both in Singapore and Philippines, by the way. So it was a mobile app. And the mobile app is making API calls to the server and was able to retrieve PII data. And that particular app runs in AWS. And it uses AWS database to keep all its customer data. The problem for this particular operator was this, for this organization was this. They kept the API key in the mobile app. So when you reverse engineer the mobile app, you could see the API key, and the attacker was able to use that key to then reach out to the AWS REST database, all of records. And this then resulted in a case being brought to this particular organization. And the organization at the end had to pay a lump sum of damages to the government for this PDPA violation. And I think in Philippines, the PDPA Act has a similar power to do the same thing in Philippines. Just want to give you an extension to that. In Singapore PDPA, the penalty is not just a fine to the person who violated. It can also be jail sentence. In Singapore, you could go to jail for up to 2 years if you're found to be neglecting API security or PII violation. I wanted to share with you Gartner's view on API. This is a very nice chart that they published about 7 or 8 months ago in October last year on what an architecture for API should look like. And you noticed here, the API gateway here, this is your traditional API gateway. Gartner is saying that there should be an edge gateway protecting the API gateway. So this edge gateway, they refer is the web app and API protection, the WAP. It's very important that you have this layer protect API gateway. In that way, you can discover shadow APIs, and then you can take control and protect the APIs. In addition, Gartner also say that there's a new tier here called departmental gateway that could complement existing API gateways. And these are usually for modern apps, like containerized applications that are microservices based. Gartner also says in the WAP layer, web app and API protection, you should have all these 6 different ways of protecting your APIs. if you are not addressing these different areas, then you could potentially be under attack for API security. I just want to call out one or two of these. The first one being the mobile app protection. I'm not sure whether you're aware, it's very easy to download a mobile app and reverse engineer it and put an overlay on top of it and be able to steal passwords and so on this. And that's the reason why, I'm not sure, yesterday there was an announcement in Singapore of a bank that actually locked down on the mobile app because they didn't want to have overlays on top of that app to be able to steal passwords on that. So that's a very critical protection, mobile app application protection, because we are also used to using it. The other thing that's very important is bot protection. I think you can see here, with bot protection, it's about automated threads, yeah? So once your shadow API, which is unintended APIs, it's very common for attackers to use scripts and bots to then massively call in and retrieve PII data. And there's another chart here I want to show is the API security maturity model. Maturity of where you are today and where you need to be. And there are basically 5 levels here. And you need to build on top of previous level before you go to the next level. So as you can see here, there's like reactive API security to proactive API security and then predictive API security. These are the natural steps, if you like, that you need to take in order to be very mature in terms of how you address API security. By the way, this is recommended by Gartner. And I think it's important to kind of recognize where you are today and where you need to be and how you build towards that. Oh, okay, this is my last slide. Just want to conclude by saying API security has become a hot topic. There's no organization that should do without API security. And these are the top attacks that are happening. So I mentioned about OWASP, top 10 API attacks, DDoS, man in the middle. Quite often we see customers have misconfiguration, the example of a shadow API, and then the bot attacks are really very common now. More than 50% of traffic on the internet today are bot related. So these are the capabilities that you should have. At layer 3, in terms of API maturity model, at layer 3 and layer 4, you should have some sort of bot protection, API discovery, and some sort of AI-based predictive security at level 5 to be able to predict that there could be attacks going on under the surface that would be important for you to be able to see those. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to thank you for your time. Hopefully you enjoy your lunch, and I'll see you around.